You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another video game review. As you've probably noticed if you've been watching the streams, I have been playing a lot, and I do mean a lot, of Hotline Miami 1 and 2, especially 2, and that's what I'm reviewing today, Hotline Miami 1 and 2. I'm doing them both as a single review for two reasons. One, I view them kind of as a complete experience, and two, they were released as a single collection in the way that I own them on Xbox One. Now, Hotline Miami 1 came out in 2012, with 2 coming out in 2015. It's a top-down shooter-type game similar to Postal 1, although you don't always need guns. There's also melee weapons, which especially in 1 are the main focus. But in 2, guns got a little bit of a buff, which was definitely necessary, because guns kind of suck in Hotline Miami 1, to be perfectly honest. The goal of each area in the game is to kill all of the enemies in the area and then proceed to the next area. Each level is divided up into floors for the most part. There is some variation to that in 2 where it's not always floors, but the format's the same. Like sometimes it'll be an area in like a jungle in the war sections and stuff. In these games, you get a different set of abilities for different characters. For instance, in Hotline Miami 1, you have different masks that each have their own unique ability. There's a mask that makes it so dogs don't attack you. There's a mask that makes it so you get more guns. A mask that makes it so you get more melee weapons. And then there's the most obvious one to use in 1, which is Tony, because it makes your punches lethal, but it doesn't have the nerf that it does in 2, because in 2, Tony actually can't use weapons. I actually prefer Tony in 2 more than I do in 1, partially because he's a different character and not just a mask, but also partially because not using weapons actually adds an added layer of challenge to the levels where you can use him in Hotline Miami 2. My first playthrough of Hotline Miami 1, I actually used the Don Juan mask, which was fatal doors, so like you ram doors into people and it kills them. Hotline Miami 2 mixes it up a little further by having not as many abilities because there's not different masks for the most part. There are different masks on some characters. For instance, the character of Jake has 3 masks. His standard mask, Jake, which similarly to Hotline Miami 1 gives lethal throws, so anything you throw will kill somebody if it hits them. And then he also has Irvin, which starts out with a nail gun. That's the entire ability. He has a nail gun at the start, which the nail gun is silent, so it gets enemies killed without alerting others, because when you fire a gun in these games, it typically alerts other enemies if it's not silenced. Although when enemies fire guns, it does not alert them. But 2 does make up for its less masks in that it has a lot more characters, because you play as quite a few. There's Martin Brown, who's an actor in a movie called Midnight Animal, where he plays the pig butcher, which seemingly is a Hollywoodized version of Jacket, and Jacket's the main character in the first game. It's actually not his real name, obviously. It was actually a name originally coined by the fans. Not the fans in-game, mind you, but the fan base coined the term, and then the creators liked it, so it sort of became how he's officially referred to, because he wears a Letterman jacket. Anyway, Martin Brown's the actor. He's this guy playing a character called the Pig Butcher, going around killing people in that movie. Then you play as Manny Pardo, who is a detective, with a little bit more to it. We'll get into spoilers later. There will be spoilers in this, because I will be talking about which are my favorite characters. Pardo is like, you know, the tough as nails, hard-boiled detective, with a twist. There's a pretty big twist. There's Evan Wright, who's a pacifist and a writer. He typically will not kill people. He just incapacitates them unless you activate his rage mode. And you do that by killing 3 enemies while they're downed, by beating them to death until they're completely bloodied and the screen starts to turn red. Other characters you play as in 2 are the Fans, which is a group of masked vigilantes who idolize Jacket for his killings in the first game. You play as Jake, a hardcore ultranationalist type, and a neo-Confederate who is a true believer in the cause of wiping out the Russians, because that is the premise of this game, is you're given these mysterious phone calls by this group called 50 Blessings that is having you eliminate the Russian mafia, because in this game it inhabits an alternate timeline where Russia and America went to war. America ultimately lost the war to Russia, and then America and Russia formed an alliance called the Russo-American Coalition, which also had ties to the Russian mafia, and the group 50 Blessings wants to destabilize that alliance in the name of patriotism, which it's actually ran by this general who kind of lost his mind when his men were like wiped out in the war and stuff. It's a pretty complex story to these games, honestly. There's stuff that even went over my head the first time I played it. But anyway, you get these phone calls, you're sent to kill the Russian mob. In 2, there's a little bit more to it than that, because there's different factions, and you even play as the Russian mafia while playing as my personal favorite character, the Son, which is the leader of the Russian mafia in 2. 2. You also play as his henchman for one level. You also play as Richter in 2, which is the character who actually shoots Jacket towards the end of 1 and put him in the coma, because 1, most of the game is actually Jacket remembering what happened through a coma dream, so that's why there are some discrepancies. But then, of course, another character you play as in 2 is Beard, which is prequel levels that take place during the war, during this fictional Hawaiian-Russian conflict. 1 is a lot more straightforward and simplistic, which is one of the reasons that a lot of the fan base does prefer it. It's actually pretty divisive with 2, especially in the fan base. The themes of 1 are mostly told to you through a story of Jacket seeing these alternate personalities portrayed through the masks, like Richard, Don Juan, and Rasmus. The game also has a meta-narrative where it's going and criticizing the player for liking violence and things like that. Not too unsimilar from the way that Undertale did it with, you know, having the pacifist route versus the genocide route and stuff. Although I will say Hotline Miami does do it a lot better. However, I think that 1 actually has a much weaker story than 2 in some regards, especially with the ending. I'm not gonna lie, when you confront the 50 Blessings janitors who have been giving you the phone calls, and basically you get these vague platitudes, and you get, like, Biker saying, oh, you're nationalist scum, which I don't really like that phrasing, because I don't think nationalism is the problem. I think the problem is that they're fucking trying to start war. Again, Biker's also not the smartest, because he gets told in 2, he gets asked in 2 if he thinks there's a conspiracy, and he's like, nah, man, it's real, not a conspiracy, because he doesn't understand the difference between conspiracy and conspiracy theory, and he conflates them as the same, and also just assumes conspiracy theory also means it's fake. Like I said, Biker's not the smartest, but he is a cool character, and he's smart enough to figure out that 50 Blessings was behind it, because Biker is another character that you played as in 1, and you initially actually fight him in 1, and seemingly kill him, but then later on it flashes back and you play as Biker and then seemingly kill Jacket. Turns out neither of that's true. Jacket kicked Biker's ass and hit him in the face with a golf club, but neither of them had reliable memories on it because Jacket was remembering it through a coma dream, whereas Biker was, like, super high when it happened. In fact, when I first played it, I initially thought they were different timelines, where in one timeline you killed Biker and in another timeline Biker killed Jacket. I wasn't sure on that, but after playing 2 and kind of coming to understand it a little more, and also, admittedly, I have watched some lore videos and stuff, which there are a lot of good ones out there. There's also a lot of fun theories that dig into shit that's possible with characters that definitely could have some validity to it, because there is a lot of ambiguity to certain aspects of the story. But there's also a lot of cringe video essays, which I have not watched, that always have titles like, I didn't understand Hotline Miami, you didn't understand Hotline Miami, or Hotline Miami and media literacy. Anyone who uses media literacy is a fucking faggot, so not really a term I really like. But that said, I do like watching a lot of lore videos from, like, Yaster or Squatch Gaming. There is a lot of good Hotline Miami videos out there that I have been watching, because I've been kind of obsessed with this game. But that said, even with a lot of these videos I have watched, there are things that I disagree with or am unsure about with them, because there is a lot of parts that are open to interpretation. Because Hotline Miami 2 is much more story-focused, has a much more fleshed-out story, but is also non-linear and kind of hard to follow at times the first time around. I mostly didn't have a problem with it, but I'll tell you right now, the fact that, and spoiler, the fact that Pardo is revealed to be the Miami Mutilator kind of went a little over my head, even though you explicitly get told that. I just figured because it was a dream, he was, like, afraid of being framed for it, because the first time around I didn't pick up on a lot of the hints, because if you don't know, Manny Pardo, the detective who's hunting this serial killer known as the Miami Mutilator, is in fact the Miami Mutilator. Now, there's speculation as to whether or not he did the killings himself, whether or not he hired someone to do it, whether or not he forced someone to do it, and that's why there's the messages saying they forced me to do it. Hard to say. Like, that's one of the things that's definitely open to interpretation. Pardo himself is going and creating a serial killer so that he can be the hero and solve the case. But I didn't pick up on that initially until I played through those levels a few more times. And also, I didn't find Jack in his trunk the first time around, because he has a guy tied up in his trunk that would later go on to be a Miami Mutilator victim. And then he tries to frame the Swans for being the Miami Mutilator by planting Jack's wallet at their house. I don't know if it's become abundantly clear, but I actually do prefer 2 over 1 by a pretty good margin. I do like both games a lot. 1 is a lot clunkier. Both of them have their jank, some of which can be funny, like this. Maybe I'll do a highlight. But other times you'll have enemies go outside of the map and you can't get to them, and so you just have to restart the level. That happened to me a lot in 1, actually. There's fun jank, like dogs spinning around and going nuts, and things being kind of weird and wonky that can be fun. But also hitboxes are really janky in 1. They definitely smoothed them out and made them better in 2. And guns feel mostly useless in 1. Like, it's actually really annoying to try and kill enemies with guns in 1, whereas in 2, there's a lot more focus on guns with a lot of the characters. I think 2 does a better job with the themes as well, because it has it portrayed through the characters rather than it all just being reflective through like different personalities and breaking the fourth wall. Keep in mind, it does that to a point too. Richard is in 2 quite a bit, talking to the characters and giving them strange omens about their upcoming deaths. Especially with the ending of 2, I think it succeeds a lot more than 1 in being like tragic and also like going into the anti-violence, anti-war message everyone says these games have. Because I'll tell you this, I never once felt guilty about killing the Russian mobsters in 1, right? Like, they're like, oh, it makes players feel guilty for their actions. No, it doesn't. Especially when you recontextualize it. Because when you actually have played 2, it recontextualizes 1 entirely, because you realize that Jacket is getting revenge for his friend. Because if you don't know, at the end of Beard's levels, he gets a gas station in San Francisco that gets nuked, and he dies a few years before the events of 1. And Jacket and Beard were close friends in the war and were part of the same team. And it recontextualizes Jacket's quest for revenge and wiping out the Russian mafia at the end of 1, because he takes them out because the Russians killed Beard. Like, it recontextualizes it entirely, and also shows you that picture that he drops off the balcony at the end of 1 is the picture him and Beard took during the war in 2. It actually makes 1 a lot more tragic. And that's something I love about this game, is each character is tragic in their own specific ways. Like, they're each different, like, they each have sad stories as they play out, and that's something I really like about it. I'm a big fan of tragedy, as you probably know if you've been watching some of my reviews and stuff for a while. But the ultimate tragedy is at the end of 2, no matter what, every single protagonist that you played, with the possible exception of Biker, dies in a nuke. Because Hawaii and Florida both get nuked, so Richter, even though he ran away to Hawaii, gets nuked. Like, everybody dies in a nuke, with the only one we don't see die is Biker, and one can only hope maybe he ran off into the desert again, like he did between 1 and 2. And, you know, maybe that could have been a Hotline Miami 3 as a post-apocalyptic world where you play as Biker. That might have been cool. But with the way that the nukes play out in the end, and the way that the war levels where you play as Beard play out, it's not just so broadly anti-violence as much as it does also have anti-war, which is something I like a lot more because it's a lot more laser-focused and actually is something I am very much in agreement with. I'm very anti-war, so it definitely adds to the impact to have the nukes and stuff. And so the different characters having their own motivations, their own tragedies, and their own reasons for being violent also make 2 a lot more interesting thematically. Now, that doesn't mean 2 is without its flaws. 2 has way too many fucking windows as compared to 1. It has what we would call a window fetish, has them fucking everywhere. And if you don't know, windows in maps can have enemies just shoot you through them from across the map. And 2 loves to do this thing, where it has enemies off-screen that can shoot you through a window on the other side of the map because you don't even know they're there because they're on the other side of the fucking map and you can't zoom out far enough to see them. Once you get the hang of this and get used to it, it's not a problem, but at first it's going to be frustrating when you initially play it. 2 also adds some more enemy types, such as dashers, who can only be killed with melee weapons, and they're kind of the opposite of the thugs, which are the big fat enemies that can only be killed with gunshots. Although all of them can be killed by Tony or Dirty Hands or Dallas. And what that means is, you know, Tony, you know, same as 1, lethal punches, except now he can't pick up weapons, and it's his own character, a member of the fans to be specific. Dirty Hands is the same ability as Tony, but it's done by the Sun. He basically just uses brass knuckles. And then Dallas is, again, similar to Tony, except this time it's a Jake mask that he uses, and also it has nunchucks, which is a unique ability where it locks you into sort of a nunchuck mode where he wildly swings them and kills enemies until it cools down, and then you have to wait to use it again. You also can't execute while using the nunchuck ability. But each of the fans also have their own unique abilities. Corey has a roll that she does where she rolls forward to dodge bullets, which the Sun can also do when using one of his abilities. The Swans are unique because you play as 2 characters with that, one with a gun and one with a chainsaw. And Mark starts out with dual-wielded SMGs. When it comes to 2, I would say my favorite levels are Apocalypse, which is the final level. It's a really epic way to end the series. It's really fun. Basically, the Sun completely tripping balls on crazy experimental drugs drugs that he made while wiping out his own men and then single-handedly taking out every member of the fans and killing them all except Tony, who gets away to get shot by Pardo. It's not a particularly hard level, it's actually one of the easiest levels in the game, but it is a fun send-off, and it's mostly cinematic in the way that it plays out. Also, you end off by walking off a rainbow bridge to his death, like you walk off the building. Apocalypse also runs parallel to my second favorite level, which is Death Wish, which is one where each floor you play as a different member of the fans, and then they all ultimately get killed at the end because the sun kills them all, just like he does in Apocalypse. Again, except Tony, who gets shot by Pardo. Other levels I actually really liked were ones that actually initially drove me nuts. Like, I loved Release. It pissed me off the first time, but I actually had an easier time with it on hard mode somehow. Probably just the practice. Other level that I loved on replay is Dead Ahead. It was a fucking bitch the first time I played it, and it is the longest level in the game, but I really like it. When it comes to levels that drove me nuts, though, like, Richter has, like, the most bullshit levels in the game. Again, Release is one that I actually grew to really like, but it is still bullshit in a lot of ways. But all of Richter's levels can be infuriating, especially Demolition. Demolition is fucking infuriating. But I also like that Richter gets fleshed out, because, you know, Richter in 1, you just know him as the guy who shot you, and he says, you know, it wasn't personal and stuff like that. But then in 2, you find out that he didn't really want to kill people. He only did the stuff for 50 blessings because they threatened to kill his mom if he didn't, and Richter's kind of a big mama's boy. And he's also, that's the way that he's tragic, is Richter's not really like a mean person or like a evil-hearted guy. He is still a murderer, but he's doing it begrudgingly because he doesn't want his mom to be killed. Still a murderer, but it adds complexity to him and makes him a lot more interesting. Just like how Jacket's doing it, you know, for his own reasons, getting revenge against the Russian mob being one of them. My favorite characters in 2, my first is obviously the son, as I said. I really like him because he's a fucking badass, has a bunch of unique abilities, and then is rebuilding his father's legacy, because his father is actually the final boss of 1, because his father was the original Russian mafia leader. Well, not original, because his father was also there, the grandfather, who is in a wheelchair, who Jacket also shoots at the end of 1. My second favorite character's gotta be Pardo. Again, it was really cool playing this game as this, like, detective that goes against the rules. You know, he's like a vigilante cop. He's gonna kill these criminals and just do shit not by the book. And he's hunting this serial killer, the Miami Mutilator. And then you find out, well, actually, he is the Miami Mutilator. He's trying to, like, make himself the hero in this story by killing people and then solving the case that he does by framing other people for doing it. But Pardo is still really cool. There's a little bit of Dirty Harry mixed into him. He's actually named after a real guy, a former detective named Manny Pardo who actually killed a bunch of drug dealers. But the in-game Pardo is also designed after Kyle Reese from The Terminator. So he's kind of a mix of a bunch of different things, which makes him a really cool character. I would say after that, it gets a little bit harder to rank. I really like Tony, mainly for aesthetics and how cool he is, but there's not really a lot of fleshing out to any of the fans, really. I also really like Evan Wright, because having him as a pacifist character is unique, although there's theories on some of these channels that I've watched about him not being as innocent as he seems to be, which is also interesting, because there is definitely the implication that he is at least aware of at least some of Pardo's misconduct. Maybe not to the full extent, it's not really explicitly said, but he may know more than he lets on about what Pardo's been doing. I personally don't believe he knows about the Miami Mutilator stuff. Maybe that he just knows about the, you know, going against the rules kind of stuff. Maybe he still assumes that Pardo's, you know, doing some bad things, but for an perceived good cause, maybe. Again, it's hard to say, because Evan might know more than that, and there is implication, like, even in Caught, the dream that Pardo has, Evan's the one who's testifying against him in the dream. But yeah, like, ranking the characters can be very difficult after the first couple, but all of the characters are good. I think that the fan base has, like, a stupid hate boner for Jake, just because he has a Confederate flag and because he's a nationalist. I love Jake. I think Jake's great. I think that Jake, is a very interesting character. He has good motivations, and obviously, like, the whole Confederate flag thing and shit doesn't bother me because I'm not a bitch. Also, it is kind of funny, you get the vibe that Jake is the kind of guy who thinks that he's more badass than he is, hence, like, the nunchucks and stuff. And his tragic ending is, you know, that he believed in 50 blessings. He was just too reckless to keep his mouth shut, and ultimately got put down because they were worried that he'd be a liability. That's presuming you survive the third floor, which canonically you don't as Jake, of his second mission, Withdrawal. Withdrawal, because Jake, once you die on the 3rd floor of Withdrawal, it ends the level, and that is canonically how Jake dies. He gets killed by the Russian Mafia after being questioned. But again, if you survive, 50 blessings will take you out as a liability, which is actually how you unlock the secret level, because 2 has a secret level called the Abyss. The Abyss is a pretty fun level, but I do wish that it was more fleshed out, and I wish that it led to something. There's speculation that it was actually tied to a possible cut additional ending, where you might have been able to prevent the nukes or something by doing a certain series of things. People speculate. Because the Abyss does feel kind of weird and out of place, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you play it, and it's fun and all, but it doesn't really do anything or add to anything all that much. Other than showing you that 50 Blessings has a bunker, and they've prepared for the nukes. Now, 1 didn't have any secret levels. It did have a secret ending where you had to collect puzzle pieces to spell out I was born in the USA to unlock the true ending where you get the dialogue revealing 50 Blessings goals. It does also have some bonus levels, which were originally, I think, free DLC, but are included on the collection, which are based off events where the game was displayed, which you unlock after beating the biker levels. Another character that I really, really like is Beard. He's definitely one of my favorites. I like his portrayal in 1 as well, where Jacket hallucinates him at every location he goes to, and that's something that's interesting. I'm not alone in this, according to comments, but much like a lot of people, I thought that Beard was like some kind of guy working for some sort of mysterious hitman thing that Jacket was a part of, and that's why he was always there, and that maybe the on the house thing was always like something to do with his payment for doing the hits or something crazy like that. Then when you have the full context that no, Beard's not really there, he's dead, and Jacket's hallucinating him because he misses his friend, it completely recontextualizes it and makes it a lot sadder. Not to mention Beard, as far as we can see, is a kind-hearted and caring guy. He was just in the war. The other secrets in 1, I suppose, would be collecting the different masks, because some of them are hidden, such as the alligator mask where you have to use a crowbar to get into a sewer outside the map. Speaking of outside the map, in 2 you can do an exploit where you wait outside the map and bait enemies out to kill them. You can't do that in 1, but it can be pretty useful in 2, especially in levels like First Blood, especially on hard mode. Now let's talk about hard mode. Hotline Miami 2 introduces a hard mode, which makes it so that your weapons have half ammo when you pick them up. It makes it so that there is no lock-on, and then the levels are also inverted, and in some cases rearranged entirely, like with Dead Ahead, where they completely change which part of the map you spawn in at. On the 4th floor, I think. Might even been the 3rd floor. I don't remember. Dead Ahead has like 5 floors, forgive me. Ironically, some of the levels I struggled with, I had an easier time with in hard mode. Again, it's partially due to practice, but also they also eliminated some doors. So like Death Wish, there's enemies that have to go around the map to get to you rather than going straight to you. So in some ways, that actually gives me more time to prepare for them to get there. Now that said, if you've seen my streams, you know for damn sure Death Wish was not easier on hard mode for me. Corey's floor was a fucking nightmare. Like, Jesus Christ, Corey's floor on hard mode is a bitch. All of the others are fine. Mark's is pretty easy, Tony's is really easy, and the Swan's is also really easy. But Corey's, for me, is such a fucking bitch. Now, it's partially because I'm not that good at doing the roll. Like, I'm really bad at dodging the bullets, so I do it sparingly. Yeah, it can be tough. So yeah, hard mode was fun, was an additional challenge, was definitely harder, but there were some instances where I got through it easier. Like Release, I did way easier on hard mode. Yeah, I've done a bunch of streams of this game. I played a bunch off stream as well. I've done some achievement hunting. Some of the achievements that are going to be a bitch to get is getting an A+ on every level in either of the games. I don't know how people do that, because what I've seen is like the way that you do it is getting high combos, and that can be really tough, especially in 2, because you gotta take cover and not get shot from all the enemies across the map while you're getting all these combos. So far, I've only A+ a few levels into. I'm working on it. I'm gonna try it eventually, but it's really difficult. Racking up high combos is super difficult for me. I don't know how people do it. But yeah, these games are really fun. They're a fun challenge. They've got a deep and interesting lore. There's a lot of theorizing you can do about it, like, did Pardo use someone else to do the killings, and if so, who? How deep does his connection to the Russians go? Because he does try to meet up with the Sun a couple of times in the story for unknown reasons. Not to mention his connection to Petrov, which he sends Evan to. There's theories about Martin Brown not really being an actor, or the movie itself being used by 50 Blessings to kill people. There's a lot of different theories around different aspects that you can dive into, and are pretty subjective and, you know, ambiguous to find out. And the creators themselves have said they know the full plot, but they're not going to spoon-feed us everything, which is something I like about it, because it is fun to theorize. At the end of the day, even on a surface level, the plot is still amazing, but when you try and dig deeper into it, it gets really interesting. Anyway, I don't know what else I really have to say. I've really enjoyed these games. I've had a lot of fun playing them, and I'm sad that there's not more levels for me to play. I hate that the console version doesn't have the level editor that the PC version does. Another thing I just quickly wanted to mention is that the soundtracks to both games are fucking iconic as hell. I think 2's better just because it has unique music for each level, whereas 1 has like 6 songs that it uses. I also think me playing on console probably makes aiming a little bit more difficult than it would have been if I was playing on PC, but regardless, I've really enjoyed these, and I highly recommend them if you've never played them. Anyway, this has been Fugitive Red Eye. Have a good one. Toodles!